Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I see you guys conversing as always. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. If there's any tech issues, please do let me know. And it looks like everything is working just fine on my end. So let me go ahead and just jump into this. Okay, guys, I feel like this is a conversation that is going to be pretty in depth for a lot of you because I think we as human beings, we deal with cruel behavior a lot more than we think we do. It's not just cruel behavior that we're seeing on TV or on the news, or that we are witnessing in somebody else's life. I think that we as humans, we deal with very strange situations every day in everyday life, whether that's at work, on your way to work, on your way back home from work, maybe going to the grocery store, whatever. You probably have seen some pretty outlandish behaviors in other human beings. I think we deal with cruel human behavior more than we think that we do. In fact, there's some research in psychology on the psychology of cruel behavior that says most human beings encounter at least a few cruel people during the week. So I'm going to get into that a little bit tonight so that you guys can understand what exactly this looks like and what exactly is cruel behavior. Now, let me look at Instagram, guys, because Instagram is acting odd again. So let me figure out Instagram. Give me 1 second, guys, and then I'm going to continue on. I'm giving you just a little bit of a inside look as to what we're going to talk about, and then we can go ahead and jump in. So bear with me as I get Instagram back up and running. As I was putting this conversation together for tonight, guys, I was thinking there's so many different areas where we can go with this topic. Tonight's topic is going to be about interpersonal cruelty, meaning that we're going to be talking about the psychology of cruel people that you're in a relationship with, maybe somebody that you used to be in a relationship with, a husband, a spouse, a romantic interest. We're also going to talk about family members who sometimes have a very cruel edge to how they communicate with us. Cruel behavior, for some people, it may sound like the word cruel is an exaggerative term. It's an exaggerated term. There's Instagram. All right, Instagram. I'm just going to say, welcome to the live chat. Come join us on my channel. There we go. Okay, we're all set, guys. We're good. So I think when most people hear the word cruel, they think of like this exaggerated word that's too big of a word for everyday life, and it's really not. It's really not. You're going to learn that in tonight's live chat. Let me give you, before I go to the chat box, see what you guys are saying and welcome you, let me give you a little bit of content up front, okay? Because I think it's essential to have a basic understanding of what's going on here. So cruelty can be defined many different ways. It just depends on what field you're coming from. For the psychology of cruelty or cruel human behavior, the term really tries to encompass an awareness of the fact that cruel human behavior is a deliberate infliction of pain, whether that's psychological pain, physical pain, or emotional pain. It is a deliberate infliction of pain of some kind. There may also be absolutely no guilty conscience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the cruel individual doesn't have empathy. We're going to get to that because I know a lot of you are probably like, what? Cruel people couldn't have empathy. That is true. But they do have a certain level of awareness of what other people could be feeling. And so we're going to get to that a little bit tonight as well. It's not compassionate empathy. It's not caring empathy. It's the knowledge of somebody else's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and how they could possibly feel. We call that cognitive empathy. So we're going to get into that a little bit. But psychology tries to encompass the reality that cruel behavior is deliberate. It's an infliction of pain, and there tends to be no guilty conscience whatsoever. There may also be a what we call a sadistic personality profile, an individual who kind of obtains this internalized gratification after they recognize the kind of pain that they have put somebody in. I think it's a very natural human emotion to feel like you want to hit back when somebody's offended you, when somebody's hurt you, when somebody's hit you, when somebody has betrayed you. It's a natural thing to want to hit back. However, that's up until a certain point, right? If the person lacks an ability to say, wait a minute, now I'm going too far. I'm trying to ruin their marriage. I'm trying to set their property on fire. I am trying to disrupt their place of employment. I am totally disregarding other people that may be involved, like other family members, children, neighbors, innocent bystanders. If you don't have, and I mean you in general, if you don't have that ability to say, wait a minute, I can go this far to hit back because I'm just hurt, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm humiliated, whatever the emotion may be. If you don't have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to go up until a certain point and then I'm done, then you really do have to question, is that person a cruel human being, right? Because a human being with natural empathy for somebody else's life, mind, spirit, soul, you don't go but so far, right? You have empathy. But when you don't have empathy, that cruel behavior doesn't have any bounds, right? There's no boundary, there's no limit. You just keep going until that little piece of you feels satisfied, okay? And we can call that Machiavellianism. Basically, the personality trait of Machiavellianism is I get this pleasurable internal sense of gratification when I do something to someone and it goes exactly the way that I want it to go, right? So Machiavellianism. So a sadistic personality profile could be in a cruel human being. You know, there's sadism somewhere at the core of who they are. And we know just from previous conversations we've had on this channel, guys, that sadism or having a sadistic personality profile, a set of characteristics that helps us understand who you really are at the core of who you are. We know that an individual who is like that is often a part of the dark triad. And the dark triad is an individual with narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. And most research suggests that if you don't have all three personality traits, you most definitely could have one that kind of supersedes the others. So maybe you're more, of an individual with a Machiavellian personality trait. Maybe you're a little bit more of a psychopath. Maybe you're a little bit more of a narcissist, right? Whatever the case may be in that dark triad, Machiavellianism tends to be the worst for the most part, especially when it comes to relationships, because the individual often has a sadistic personality profile. It's very hard to shift that, to change it, because there's a physiological response at the core. And it says, I get excitement when bad things happen to other people. There's also, when it comes to cruel human behavior, and I'm going to go to the chat box. I see you guys really chatting it up here. But when we talk about cruel human behavior, we're also talking about a complex set of motivations. There's many motivations for cruel behavior, so it's complex, right? There's also complex behaviors and complex underlying processes. I know that sounds like a lot, so I'm going to break it down. There's a complex set of motivations. There's many different reasons why cruel behavior exists and it occurs. There's often many reasons why there's cruel behaviors, right? And sometimes it doesn't always make sense. Sometimes, for a clear example here, you can grow up in a wonderful family. That's a loving family. That's very supportive. That's higher socioeconomic status that's involved. And you can still become a Jeffrey Dahmer. Dennis Neal was a psychopath that murdered his victims, put them in his home so that he could have some company because he was quote unquote lonely. Dennis Neal, however, did not grow up in an abusive household. It was stated in many of his, interviews and documentaries on him that he actually grew up in a pretty supportive, loving household. So the motivations are complex, the behaviors are complex, and then there's complex underlying processes. There's mental processes, emotional processes, there's social elements here, there's cultural elements as well. So it gets pretty intricate. Let me also mention before I go to the chat box that we also have to really look at animal cruelty here. Now, some people may be like, what? Animal cruelty, as we're talking about humans who are cruel? 100%. And here's why. There's a lot of research on psychopaths that suggests and has confirmed that children and adolescents who engage in animal cruelty often end up later in life engaging in cruelty of other human beings. So that is basically the research that is on conduct disorder. If you have, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this too tonight, if you have a young person who is not being treated correctly, we're going to get into this later, so I won't break it down right now. But if they're not being treated correctly, if they have a genetic vulnerability, right, or if they are somewhere in their family bloodline, there's a high heritability of antisocial behaviors, and that child is not getting proper treatment, medication, therapy, it is very, very likely that they can kind of spiral in their behaviors and start to treat animals cruel. It can start with, I'm going to kill a bee. Okay, we all want to kill them, right? They're horrible, some of them. They're scary. They sting you. Of course, we don't want to be around them. But sometimes it goes from, okay, killing a bug that most people kill. Okay, then it goes to maybe something a little deeper, like snatching or pulling off the wings of a fly, because I just want to see how it reacts when I break its wings. Okay, I had a kid one time tell me that in therapy. Miss Tamara, I wanted to see what happens if I took the wings off of a fly. Would it kill him? Would it not? Then this child, I'm giving you an example of the child that I had 5 or 6 years ago. Then he decided to cut a fly in half. I want to see what that does, Oh, it bleeds too. Oh, that's so cool. Wonder what would happen if I did it to a bee. Then a bee went to a bird. Then a bird went to frogs. Then a frog went to dogs. And then dogs went to siblings. And it continued, right? So we can't necessarily leave that out of this equation either. And I'm going to talk about what you may notice within your own family or within your own relationship with somebody like this. Don't minimize if they are cruel to animals, if they are cruel to other living, breathing things, because sometimes that's a clear warning sign that they lack empathy to a certain extent. Okay, let me go to the chat box. You guys are chatting it up. I'm going to welcome you, read some comments, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the content. I want to teach you about something that's known as theory of mind, or empathy loss. We can call it that as well. And then what's wrong with these people, right? I'm going to tease that apart for you. And then I'm also going to give you some insights on what you may notice, okay? What you may notice in somebody that you're connected to who's like this. James McDonald, hello, welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Always glad to see you guys back, returning. James McDonald says, hi, Tamara and everyone. Cruelty, mental health issues, addiction, and toxicity was rife within my family and household. Looking forward to the discussion and interactions on this important topic. Yes, thank you for that. I'm so glad you're looking forward to it. I hope it's going to be helpful. And I'm sorry that you've had to deal with these kind of issues. Let me just say there's a large percentage, according to research on family systems or family dynamics. There's a lot of research. I'll post it in the description box, as I always do, so that you can see I'm not making this stuff up. This is stuff that's really happening, that we are learning as a field. But there's definitely research on family systems that says that there's often a high heritability of antisocial behavior, of intergenerational trauma, of animal cruelty, or kind of lacking empathy, I should put it that way. And addiction tends to also run rampant in families where there's cruel behavior. So I'm sure this conversation will be helpful. Kim, I see you here. If I can get you up on the screen. For some reason, my mouse is acting very weird. Not tonight, YouTube, not tonight. Kim, hello, welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. Jessica J, hello. I'm so sorry about that. Hang in there, okay? I know you've been going through a lot. Yeah, I hope this chat will be helpful. If it doesn't do anything, it certainly will validate you guys. Hopefully you will digest the knowledge, but I also wanted to validate you because I think a lot of times we look at ourselves and say, okay, maybe we're going too far in how we feel about that other person. The reality is you might be onto something. Mama Lena, hello and welcome. Glad to have you back from Germany. Welcome, welcome. Odetta, hello and welcome. Yeah, from New York City, the Bronx. Welcome. Glad to have you tonight. I see Nancy R and Live Life. Hello and welcome. Welcome. Glad to see you guys back. Give it a think. Hello and welcome. I also see Deb. Thank you so much for confirming that. I love when there's no tech issues. Olivia Cadena, hello and welcome. Deb, I don't know if I welcomed you. I think I did. Hello and welcome. FIFA LaFleur, hello. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Catherine Grubber, welcome back. Glad to see you. Says, moving this month with my husband and kids away from the area where my toxic parents live. Wow. I have been no contact with them since June. My goodness. Well, that is going to be a very complicated family dynamic. I know you're very, very aware of that. You're always here with us, so you probably know what to look for. That's for sure. If it's a healthy move, I'm very glad it's happening for you. That's wonderful. Seb. Oh, that's probably wrong. I apologize. Welcome from Canada. I love it there. Love it there. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Olivia Cadena says she's from Texas. Whoa, it's hot down there, right? I feel like there was just a flood or a storm there or something. But welcome. Hope you're okay down there. Judith Barrett, much violence in movies and TV, 100%. Welcome, by the way. I agree. There is some research in psychology that states that if children, by the age of 4 years old, that's such a tender age, right? But there's some research in psychology that says that children by the age of 4 can start to develop antisocial traits if they are introduced to violent video games too soon in their brain development, if they are introduced to violence on television, right? Even if it's real life violence, like the news, if there's too much exposure to that, research in psychology says that it can influence a child's behavior. So we do have to be careful, right? There's definitely a relation, definitely. Soha, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Welcome. Okay, I am looking for comments, guys. Sun and Sunflowers, welcome. Always glad to see you. I always think of Tranquility when I see your screen name. I do. Tinablas, Abysmos. I messed that up every live chat, but welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Elizabeth Wiley, hello. Welcome. Looking for comments here. FIFA LaFleur says, my mom and dad are both cruel to me. They have both abandoned me after having late stage cancer. Both have personality disorders. Yeah, my goodness. That's really difficult. I'm so sorry to hear that you've gone through that. Let me just say that there is some research that highlights that people who have personality disorders, they can have a lot of cruel behaviors, especially dark empaths, individuals who have the dark triad traits, psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. They tend to have very cruel behavior because that's just who they are. That's who they are at the core of themselves. It's not like it is a situation where, okay, somebody has exhibited or displayed some cruel behavior, but if they have some kind of redemption or hope or peace or love, they can change. No. Personality disorders like antisocial personality disorder that's on the severe end. So we're talking about the Jeffrey Dahmers, the sociopathy, the psychopathy, the dark empathy or the dark empath. Those individuals, it's very hard to change their personality profile. It's going to take some real expertise, to get through to them, to help them process how they impact other people in life. Because a lot of times with individuals who have personality disorders that are sadistic. So we're talking about the dark triad, the narcissist, the psychopath, those kind of individuals, they tend to have a tunnel vision, and their tunnel vision is all about them, right? Like Dennis Neal said during one of his interviews, when he was interviewed after murdering so many people and keeping their bodies for company. He says to one of the interviewers, he says, I've been lonely all my life. And so I just wanted to be liked. I wanted some friends. And so in his very sick mind, because that's what it is, in his very, very sick mind, he felt that he was going to have friends, quote unquote friends, if he murdered and kept the bodies of the people. So there's often this tunnel vision. And so for you, FIFA LaFleur, it doesn't shock me, right, if they are cruel and if there's a personality disorder there, because that would make total sense. They're all about themselves, right? They don't even consider you. The other piece of this puzzle is sometimes cruel individuals do have health conditions, and we call that co-occurring disorders. Sometimes a Jeffrey Dahmer or a Dennis Neal, or maybe a mother and father who has sexually violated you, harmed you, minimized you, ignored you, gave you up, whatever the case may be. A cruel individual could have something like a cancer diagnosis, could be paralyzed, could have a mental illness. There could be something else in addition to their cruel behavior. And interestingly, it exacerbates the issue a lot. That was my long response to your statement. Helene Webster, hello, welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Daryl Hellis, hello, much love to you. Glad to see you. Glad to see you as always. Love, laugh, live. Maggie, hello and welcome. Yes, you're welcome. And thank you so much for that. I love when you guys tell me that, because that means we're on the right track, right? FIFA LaFleur says cold empathy. No, cognitive empathy. Did I say cold empathy? I may have. I don't know. Cognitive empathy. Briefly, cognitive empathy is I actually have the ability to rationalize how you may feel. I can also rationalize in my mind. I can also pick and pull apart in my mind because I tend to be quick-witted. I can pick and pull apart what you want from me. But emotionally, I really don't care. That's cognitive empathy. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. Deb says, my dad and my daughter both inflict intentional emotional pain. So glad she's leaving, and I've been no contact with my dad for years now. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. God, Deb, I feel like just recently you guys were getting back together and things were well, unless this is another daughter. I'm so sorry that is happening again. It's not good. Let me welcome a few more people and look for comments, guys. Then we're going to get back into the content. There's so much to discuss tonight. Napalm 1334. Hey, chat. Hey, Tam. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you as always. Cluster B. Oh, I can't say that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm good at some Spanish. We'll throw that out there, but that looks French to me. I don't think it is. I don't know. Hello and welcome. Forgive me. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Daniels, hello. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat as well. Welcome, welcome. I don't remember seeing you, so welcome. Mark Taylor, glad to see you back. Glad to see you back. Welcome. Keith Bailey, hello. Welcome. Okay, Napalm 1334 says, I feel my family, at least some members are cruel, sadistic. My sister and dad get along with me. My mother and brother love inflicting pain on the rest of us. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just say too, that it doesn't have to be sadistic behavior to be cruel. That's only a piece of the puzzle. Let's jump in, okay? I see other people's comments. And I'm definitely going to get to them. Let's jump in just a little bit here so that we can stretch our understanding of cruel human behavior. It doesn't necessarily have to just be, once again, sadistic. It could be what we call empathy loss. Empathy loss is an inability to consider what somebody else may be feeling or thinking or experiencing on the inside of them, because of something that you've done to them. There's a part of the brain on the sides of our head, okay? It's behind what's called the temporal lobe area. If you think about a brain, basically a brain is a fist, right? If you hold it, I think this way, right? So then you have the front part of the brain. You have the brain stem, which is your arm, right? Can you kind of see where I'm going? At the top of the brain is the parietal lobes. That has a lot to do with sensory experiences, right? Feeling things on the body when someone touches you, feeling a breeze, that kind of thing. When you feel yourself rub your hair, that's the parietal lobes, the sensory piece. But then on the sides of the brain, we have what's called the temporal lobes, okay? And the temporal lobes has a small neurological component to it that is known as TOM, T-O-M, theory of mind. And that's another way to explain empathy. And empathy, as you know, there's a part of it that's genetic. It is heritable to a certain extent. And some people that have not had the experience of developing theory of mind or empathy over time, they're unable to detect how what they do, say, whatever affects somebody else. There is research in psychology that suggests the ability to feel what another person is experiencing doesn't always have to be empathy, right? So now we're talking about cognitive empathy. Empathy is not always connected to compassion. I think we have that wrong concept, that if you're empathic, that means that you care and love. But you can actually imagine what somebody else is feeling without feeling what they're feeling. I'll give you an example. All this week for me, I've had clients come in. They're hurting, they're crying, they've been hurt, violated, deceived. The list goes on. Like this week in the office has been an entire week of 11 to 12 people, Monday through Friday, of crying, wanting to kill themselves, wanting to commit homicide, getting into fights, disorderly conduct charges being like the list this week has been enormous when it comes to human pain. And what I've heard all this week was what sounds to me to be cruel behavior. I can take my client's pain and feel that. That impacts me. And so I can sit and listen, and I can hurt with them. A cruel person cannot. They can sit and listen, but because they lack theory of mind, they lack empathy, what's known as affective empathy, emotional empathy, compassionate empathy. Because they lack that kind of empathy, they can't feel that other person's pain. But a complete narcissist, sociopath, psychopath can use cognitive empathy, the ability to kind of logically rationalize what that person most likely is feeling. They can use that against you and get into your good graces and deceive you and harm you and manipulate you, right? Because they know exactly what buttons are being pushed on the inside of you. To me, that is one of the most hideous evils that there is in humanity, that you can actually use a form of empathy, cognitive empathy, to actually impact the other person. Sometimes psychopaths will use cognitive empathy to gain the trust of their victims. And so let me give you a more, I think, relational example that can maybe relate to you in some ways a little bit better than just Jeffrey Dahmer. So let's say, for example, your mom has been a narcissist all her life. She's a covert narcissist. She hides under the radar. But when she closes the front door, she's mean, controlling, angry, self-centered, selfish. The list goes on, right? So that is your mother. She's always been very emotionally detached and very emotionally immature. As a parent, you grew up under this mom who was always detached. She just doesn't care. Let's say you decide to get engaged. Okay. Your husband is rich and he's handsome. What do you think a cruel mother might do in that kind of scenario? The unthinkable. So this is kind of, I'm trying to get you closer to maybe a realistic example of cruelty. The mother may flirt with your spouse, may question him left and right about where he got the money, how much education he got or had, how did he make so much money so young, what does he plan to do when he marries you, how many kids does he intend to have, does he ever intend to divorce you? Very, very complicated and just personal questions she may ask. I once had a mother in session with me 3 or 4 years ago. Her daughter was coming to me for psychotherapy. She invited her mom in. Mom literally asked her about her sexual experience with her husband, literally asked her for details. And that's where I said, no, we're not going there. We're not doing this in this session today. How dare you? But this is the kind of embarrassing, deliberate infliction of pain, emotional pain, psychological pain that a parent could do. I've also seen situations in therapy where the mother does confess, I'm attracted to my daughter's husband, or I'm attracted to my son's girlfriend. I've had that as well. I've also had situations where cruelty could be as simple as, or having no empathy could be as simple as somebody has died in the family and somebody has rigged the whole system, the paperwork, so they can take control of that deceased person's possessions, and is doing it without any conscience whatsoever. So those are a little bit, I think, more common experiences of cruel behavior. Okay, guys. But let me just say, before we go to the next point here, we're going to look at what's wrong with these kind of individuals. We know already they don't have empathy. It tends to be not affective or emotional or compassionate empathy. It tends to be cognitive empathy. They can rationalize how you feel. They can rationalize what you need and what you want. Other than that, they can't feel, right? The other piece of this, though, is a warped sense of feelings. That's really what a cruel person has, a warped sense of feelings. It's very intricate. Remember at the beginning, I said there's a complex set of behaviors, motivations, and processes. So they have a very intricate set of feelings, and for the most part, they don't understand their own feelings sometimes, and that's the scary and the sad part. Let me also say that these kind of individuals may mimic other people's emotions. They may mimic other people's emotions. They can visualize or observe somebody else going through something. And just like you would, change your shirt, change your pants, change into different pairs of shoes or socks, right? Or change your makeup if you're a female, a cold-hearted, cruel person can look around and say, oh, I like how that person is really crying. I like that. I think I'll try that next time. Just like you take one hat off and put on another. They can do that with emotions. They can do that with trying to influence you to believe that they feel your pain. They can steal characteristics from other people and they use it against you, or they use it as a way to manipulate you in some form. Cruel human beings, if you hear nothing else tonight, cruel human beings tend to premeditate how they are going to impact somebody else. They're not just doing things that are mean because they're mean. They tend to be very methodical in how they want to harm other people. There's a reason why I no longer work in the juvenile justice system. I don't like working with sociopaths. I don't like working with psychopaths. There's a reason why I no longer do, because they are very, very hard to change, and everything they do it naturally, For most of us, it would be hard to be cruel. We would have some kind of feelings in our heart or some kind of conscience that just won't let us rest. A cruel person doesn't have that. So what's wrong with them? What does psychology say is wrong with these people? Well, they have an inability to control strong emotions. We're going to talk about delusional jealousy tomorrow. And let me just say, a lot of these individuals who are cruel, they don't have the ability to control their emotions. They become very, very hostile. They rage, they're mean, they're very angry individuals who have really no ability to control their impulses, their desires, and they really have no desire to control themselves. They think the way that they behave is acceptable, even if they get arrested, even if they go to prison for years. Have you ever heard, I'm sure you have, of those individuals who go to prison, they finally get free after 12 years and they do something and they go back? Possibly a person with no empathy, no ability to rationalize whatsoever. They tend to be very impulsive, and they go by what their heart wants them to do. And for the most part, that's to harm other people. That's not to care about them, guys? So they tend to have an inability to control strong emotions. They also have a ton of behavioral problems. Now, let me demonstrate this for you. I have paper. Let me grab it. I have paper, even though it should be over here, right? I'm going to catch on. I will, I promise. Let me show you how this can go, okay? Because this is going to entail an individual who tends to be cruel to animals as well. Okay, so here's the way I want you to see this. These kind of individuals often have unresolved behavioral problems. It's not like all cruel individuals tend to have no empathy. They tend to also have behavioral problems that starts very, very early. So here's kind of the way that I like to explain this, where we have an individual, let's say, who has untreated or poorly treated ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If that is not properly treated, then we can move up the ladder to ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. If that's not properly treated, we can then sometimes move to conduct disorder, CD. And if conduct disorder is not properly managed, then we can escalate and become, here we are, antisocial personality disorder. So this is kind of the ladder. This is kind of the ladder system. And it says that if a child has ADHD that is not properly regulated, not properly treated, not properly managed, then that child can become so impulsive and so inattentive that they then become oppositional defiant. And there are sometimes both of those things that happen at the same time. Sometimes a child with ADHD can also be a very oppositional child, a child that has no ability and doesn't care to, no ability to listen. And they tend to inflict intentional pain. Kids who have oppositional defiant disorder tend to inflict intentional pain. And if that's not properly managed and maintained, then it can go to conduct disorder, where the child is now getting some kind of pleasure out of intentionally inflicting pain on other people. And then that's where the animal cruelty starts. That's where the legal issues tends to start. That's where truancy begins. That's where juvenile delinquency begins for a lot of those kids. Can that child be treated and rehabilitated and turned around? Yes. But if they are not kind of following that course, then later as an 18-year-old or older, they can start doing things like sexual assault. They could get into violating children. They can get into selling drugs. They can get into prostituting women. And then there's the antisocial personality disorder exhibiting itself, but in very, very bad ways. And we're talking about the high end. Some people are antisocial and they don't do those things. But that's the ladder system. So there's animal cruelty between conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder, And so there's what I was saying at the beginning about animal cruelty. Sometimes animal cruelty can turn into cruelty towards human beings. So there tends to be a lot of behavioral problems. There also tends to be what's called a deviance generalization hypothesis. Let me repeat that. It's a deviance generalization hypothesis. It's a theory of mind. It's kind of like a concept that says that if there's deviance here, then that deviance is going to generalize itself to other components. So let's say, for example, your dad, your father, is a manipulator. He has stolen money. He's manipulated the family. Maybe he's manipulated people out of their family inheritances. He's a liar, a pathological liar, and he's had multiple affairs on your mom or your family. That's dad, right? So let's say as a child, he was cruel to animals. He was very oppositional, defiant, and he dropped out of high school. His first arrest made him a felon. That's a little bit of a rap sheet, right? And so his behavior as a child can then be hypothesized to include those behaviors being generalized in other areas of his life. Does that make sense, guys? So he started young, and it doesn't just stop there. It is now generalized into other areas of his life. Now he's impacting you. Now he's impacting your mother. Now he's impacting the criminal justice system. So deviance, generalization, hypothesis. You're deviant here, which means you're likely to be deviant in a lot of different areas. I also think that there are some people, and research doesn't really back this up a lot because of so many different theories of evil, but I strongly believe, I'm going to go to the chat box in just a minute, see what you guys are saying. I strongly believe that evil behavior is a part of cruel behavior. You would have to have a propensity towards or a desire to be an evil individual, to do things to hurt others, to one up them or get above them or be ahead of them. There's a desire in most of these people who are like this, a mother, a father. Who wants to believe a parent could be evil, could be cruel? But it is true. I once did counseling with a mother who, and this was in group therapy. This is when I worked in a community mental health center, and I was treating a lot of adults in a group therapy setting. There was like eight or nine individuals in a group. And this was years and years ago, maybe over 8 or 9 years ago. And in that group, I'm going to tell you this briefly, in that group was one woman. She appeared very, very innocent to me, but there was something that rubbed me the wrong way about her. Just when she would talk, when she would cry, when she would kind of suck the empathy from other group members for herself, I just couldn't swallow it. I just couldn't get on board with wanting to be compassionate towards her. She talked about being abused, being harmed, being treated wrongly by her parents, and being traumatized. None of it was true. It was all a lie. One day I'm watching the news in my kitchen. I'm drinking coffee, minding my own business. I look at the TV screen and up pops her face on the news. Why? She took her infant, who was 2 weeks old, threw the infant in the river. She's still in prison, by the way. Threw the infant in the river, cleaned everything with bleach, and thought she got away with it. And guess what she did? Came to group the day after, group therapy, the day after she committed this crime. And so she's a prime example of evil behavior. Her evil was so very inherent. It was so ingrained that she had the ability to murder her 2-week-old baby, clean up the area, and come to group therapy like nothing ever happened. And I wouldn't have known anything about it because she didn't appear off to me that day. But after, a couple of days later, I saw her face on the news, and I'm thinking, this is an evil person. This is the epitome of evil right here. So there has to be some kind of propensity towards doing things that just is really hard to wrap your mind around, right? Let me also say that these kind of individuals also vicariously enjoy other people's downfall. This is the last thing before I go to the chat box. They enjoy other people's downfall. They vicariously enjoy it, meaning they don't have to commit the crime. They don't have to do the crime. They don't even have to be a part of it. Sitting back and watching it is good enough. So vicarious. I experienced the crime through you. Oh, you murdered your baby 2 weeks ago? Wow, that's sad. But it's also very interesting. What did you do? How did you do it? When did you do it? Did you think about it? I had some people in group like that. They were very fascinated by this whole situation. But yeah, there you go. I mean, sometimes they vicariously experience these emotions of pleasure and joy when they see other people being harmed or other people hurting people. That's another thing. All right, guys, let me get to the chat box. I feel like I've been talking for like 900 minutes straight. Let me take a break. Napalm 1334 says, I feel my family, at least some members, are cruel, sadistic. Okay, I think I read this one already. My sister and dad get along with me. My mother and brother love inflicting pain on the rest of us. Yeah, absolutely. I think I read that one before we went back to the content. Catherine Grubber says, I think my toxic mom has BPD. Sometimes that can be at the core. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Mark Taylor says criminal behavior or Machiavellianism. It could be either one. Criminal behavior is sometimes the result of Machiavellianism. It's that I need that pleasurable thing to happen to me. And that is watching somebody else being harmed or causing somebody else's harm. Robert Redmond's Clip Channel. Hello, welcome. I know you've been trying to get a hold of me for so long. I think you already left me a voicemail, and I have not been able to get back to you. Feel free to look in the description box. Send me an email, okay? Because I'm going through all my emails this weekend. I'm like literally buried in emails. So yes, please contact me via email. Dawn One, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hope you're feeling well or doing well as well. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm looking for comments. James McDonald says, unhealed people who are unwilling to be honest and face their own shadows, that's a good point, are most likely to project their own issues onto others. Especially those closest to them, which only amplifies the problem. Sometimes it does. Yes. Sometimes they are unhealed, and sometimes, guess what? They're evil, dysfunctional, and cruel. You know, doesn't always have to mean they're unhealed. Kat, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Glad to see you. FIFA LaFleur says, my mom is a borderline narcissistic and histrionic. My dad is narcissist and with antisocial traits, excuse me. Let me just say, FIFA LaFleur, if mom is not clinically diagnosed borderline narcissistic and histrionic, you may want to be careful with that, because here's the thing. She could actually have all three, but she could actually have one of those. Like somebody who has borderline personality disorder can also just be histrionic in how they respond to things. They can be very theatrical and, you know, and almost like they're on a stage. What makes a person histrionic and not borderline is the simple fact that they tend to be very, 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 very theatrical. Like it's an actual personality trait that's been consistent over years, you know, and there's a lot of overlap there. So, you know, your mom may just be borderline with some tendencies of being theatrical and dramatic, you know. Or she could be narcissistic and has some very emotional sides to herself, you know. These are cluster B personality traits for those of you who are not aware. Looking for comments, guys. Bear with me. Oh, Lord, there's so much here. Okay. Catherine Grubber says, we tried family therapy. We did one session. She cried, saying she did nothing wrong and took no accountability, just played the victim. Yeah. And I've been in sessions like that where somebody's like, can't you see they're lying? You know, can't you see that there's something wrong here? Yes. Sometimes the therapist can see what is wrong. You really don't have to try to get them to understand it from your eyes, you know? Family therapy is rough, though, because you're just like, hello, therapist, there's something going on here. And if you don't have a good family therapist or a good therapist, it can kind of go over the therapist's head. You know what I mean? But sometimes you have to go more than once. You got to give the therapist time to work out the details, because the way you see it may not necessarily be correct. And the dynamics that you see at play may not necessarily be the bigger issue in the middle of that relationship, right? Yeah. Therapy can be very complicated. Lioness of Gaia. Hello and welcome. I really messed that up. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Okay, I'm just looking for more comments from you guys because I'm way behind. Cam says, I often hear triangulation described as being done behind someone's back so they don't know initially. Can triangulation be done in front of you? Would it still be considered triangulation? Yes, absolutely. So let me give you an example that happens sometimes with me in therapy with clients. Sometimes what will happen is I am there to observe, to kind of sense the tension in the room or the energy. I am also there to kind of tease apart my own biases while I'm looking at who's in front of me. And I'm also, and this is most therapists, not me, not just me. And then sometimes I'm there kind of observing the interaction between two people, three people, or a family. And I have to do that so that I can fully understand who's at fault here, what's at fault, what causes problems, who says what before this happens, right? So I've got to fill all that out. But here's where triangulation can happen right in front of my eyes. Let's say, for example, I make a comment. Sometimes when families are arguing or fighting, I will let them fight and argue so that I can understand what the dynamics are. And then sometimes I'll get in and I'll say, nope, we need to stop. So now we're going too far. And then I'll give a directive. I'll say, I need you to be quiet, to calm down so that I can now hear what she has to say. You've done enough talking. And then I give the other person the go ahead to talk. If that person in a fit of anger and rage feels like I'm going to cause some problems here, then here's what they could do. Triangulation. Okay, Cam, here's what they do. Miss Tamara said A, B, and C. Or, don't you remember what Tamara said the other day? She told me to tell you. Or they will say something like, Miss Tamara called you a narcissist. You know, and I'm like, okay, I did. I called you a narcissist. I mean, you are what you are. But somebody who wants to triangulate, thank God that's never happened. But somebody who wants to triangulate right in front of my eyes will do that. Well, Tamara said this. Tamara meant this. Tamara told me that you are this way, A, B, and C, right? Karen told me that you are, you know, or Dad told me the other day about your A, B, and C. So that's triangulation. I'm going to pull somebody into this exchange to try to impact this very moment. Okay. So Cam, yes, triangulation can happen behind your back, but it can also happen right in front of you. Thank God I've never had that experience. I don't even know what I would do. I think I would have to stand my ground. I try not to say anything that I wouldn't want to say in front of you. That's for sure. But some people, they do go that far. Karen said, Dad said, Mom told me, you said. Triangulation right in front of you. Fairy girl, welcome to tonight's live chat. Glad to have you here with the dabs. Hello and welcome. Giving some light to this dark conversation. Kat, let me just read this. She says, they tend to love and respect and love their bad kids and hate the good ones. I think you might be picking up from a conversation earlier. Sometimes cruel parents who are very cold and callous, they do gravitate, and this is backed up by psychology research, they do gravitate towards the kids who tend to be the most antisocial. Isn't that interesting? Jessica J says, Tamara, do people take their anger out on animals when they're angry with human beings? Sometimes. I've had situations where, which thank God I no longer deal with these kind of individuals. When I was working in that community center where the woman murdered her 2-week-old infant, in that same community center, there was an individual there who would beat up her dog. It was domestic violence against her dog. And the poor dog, thankfully, the neighbors heard the dog kind of whimpering one night and went next door and saw the dog had blood and scratches and hair pulled. And the poor baby, he was such a cute lad. And the poor thing just got abused because his quote unquote mom was just so mean. She was angry with her husband for having an affair. He must have left that night. Something happened there, and she decided to take out the anger on her animal. So yes. Olivia Cadena is asking me, where did I get this topic from? Yeah, I think that's what I'm understanding from my own clinical experience. And I do meet with my colleagues I have a small group of colleagues, and we meet and we talk about our cases and talk about our experiences. And so my inspiration sometimes comes from that. Speaking Sparrow, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says many are demon possessed and need an exorcism. My grandfather, my mother, my grandmother, they would all agree with you. They would all agree with you. And to be very honest, I don't disagree. Burst, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Welcome. Glad to have you as a first live appearance. Glad to have you. Mia K, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Says my husband's brother, 100% Machiavellian. He endured every form of abuse. From him, you can think. I'm having a hard time. I'm sorry, guys. Let me read that over. He endured every form of abuse. From him, you can think. There's large gaps in his memory from childhood. He's 32 now and just now starting his healing journey. Excuse me, guys. I'm getting thirsty here. It sounds to me, yeah, it sounds to me like it's definitely a family issue. Let me just say, and I'm sorry to hear that's complicated indeed. Let me just say that if that's a part, if you have an individual like this within your family dynamic, it is very possible that there's heritability in your family lineage. So it's not just cousin Win-Win over there. It's also Uncle BB and Aunt Susu and Uncle Karen or Aunt Karen, I should say, or Billy over there. There tends to be a high heritability of antisocial behavior. Antisocial personalities are not just molded by the environment, right? You're not just made into that over time. You also have a biological component there, and depending on what your experiences are in your life growing up and in your life as an adult will determine if you're going to become like a sociopath or a psychopath or not, or a narcissist, So you're not just made. Sometimes you're also born that way. So there's research that backs up the concept that there's high heritability, excuse me, high heritability when it comes to antisocial behaviors. Emmy, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. I feel like I'm way behind in comments. Let me keep going. And then we're going to get back into the content, guys, because you guys are going to want to know, what do I need to look out for with these kind of people in my family or somebody I'm in a relationship with? Odetta says, could a person have cruel behavior that stems from unresolved trauma and past drug addiction? Short answer is yes. I have two sisters that came at me in a cruel way, and I have been no contact for a year. Yes. So think of, I'm not going to demonstrate it because I was going to write it down for you. I'm just going to give you just kind of like a mental picture of this. Kind of see addiction and childhood trauma as what we call risk factors. So if we had to look at a psychopath who had what we call risk factors, we would see a lot of the reasons why they are so problematic. Risk factors are things such as juvenile delinquency, dropping out of high school, being born into an abusive family, parents have been drug abusers, you grew up around prostitution, crime, urban life, inner city life, right? Lower socioeconomic status, going to schools that are on the lower spectrum of class and money, having little to no access to programs that can better you, abusing drugs and alcohol yourself, all of those things, teenage pregnancy, early sexual experiences, sexual abuse, violence, right, crime, all of those things are called risk factors. And those are things that put us at risk for becoming very complicated individuals ourselves. There's protective factors like good parents, good neighborhoods, better schools, access to resources. That's protective. It protects us from becoming problematic sometimes. So to your question, Odetta, yes, a cruel behavior and a person who is unhealthy can have those two risk factors, childhood trauma and addiction. And that can worsen the situation and cause them to be very detrimental to you and to themselves. I hope that answered your question. That was a great question. Okay, I'm going to answer one more person or see what they're saying, and then we're going to get back into the content. Mark Milliner, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. Says most of the so-called elite in Western culture are psycho. That's where we learned it from. Well, I mean, I'm going to walk that line. I'm not going to fully agree, but I'm not also going to fully disagree because I think some of that is true. Deb says sociopathy is hard. Yes, it is. I agree. Very. Let me tell you what you're likely to see in these people. Oh my God. There's a reason I no longer work with them because it's just so draining. It's so draining. Okay. One thing that you are likely to see is young antisocial behavior. So let's say you have a family member like this, or you're in a relationship with someone like this, or your best friend is like this, a cousin, whatever, whoever it is, you are likely, and this is according to research in this area. So understanding dark empaths, and understanding people with personality disorders, young antisocial behavior is almost the number one thing that you are likely to see before that person becomes a cruel adult. So young antisocial behavior. Remember ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, antisocial? Well, if you're dealing with animal cruelty as a young person, let's say this is your husband, he harmed animals, he was manipulative, he was oppositional defiant, he had impulsivity, he was very inattentive in school, he dropped out of school, didn't even get a GED, has worked as a janitor all his life. Now he's angry, he's drinking, using drugs, and he doesn't sleep well, and he tends to be very irritable. All of that is a major explosion. And sometimes all of that is the result of being very young and having antisocial behavior. All of that is sometimes the result of being a young antisocial individual or having some kind of conduct disorder or traits of sociopathy. There's also deliberate intention to harm in these individuals. Your mom, your dad, if you have parents like this, God forbid, but if you have parents who seem cruel, they don't care if you're homeless. They're not going to invite you into their home. They don't care if you can't pay your rent. You better go take out a loan because I'm not going to help you. They don't care that, you were harmed by your husband or beat up by your wife or beat up by your husband. They're not going to talk to you about it because they don't care. Or they're so narcissistic that you're dealing with chaos in your life and you're trying to talk to your dad or your mom about it, and your mom and dad is too busy worrying about the Christmas party they want to have in the next 5 months when December hits us, that kind of thing. That's an example. But let's say you have a family member like this. They may have this deliberate desire to cause you some kind of infliction of pain or harm. They also utilize conflict and confusion. Remember we talked about triangulation a couple minutes ago? Well, they love manipulation. They love confusing things that you say. They love doing underhanded things like pointing you out when you least expected, or taking money back from you that you borrowed. Yes, you borrowed the money, but you may not have it right now to give back, but they're going to say, gimme, gimme, gimme. I don't care if you can't pay your rent, you're going to pay me back. Those kind of individuals, they like to use conflict and confusion. They may even come to you and start a fight behind your back that involves you in some way. They also follow the road to crime. Petty theft, small crimes, petty theft. Now I'm getting caught with marijuana. Now I'm getting caught selling drugs. Now I'm going to jail for a while. I posted bail. Now I'm out of jail. Now I'm prostituting women. Okay, I went to jail for that. Now I'm out of jail for that. But here we go. I'm going to start the roll again because now I've sexually violated a person underage. I've now robbed a bank, right? It's this rap sheet. It's a rap sheet. And people make mistakes. People can redeem themselves. They can be redeemed. There's grace. There's forgiveness, right? There's change. But Sometimes you can look at a person's long history of crime and you can see where the problem is. This is a person who gets stimulation from doing criminal, bad, negative things. There may also, within these kind of individuals, there may also be a detachment from the self. So almost like a form of dissociation. They commit the crime, they murder, they do bad things, they manipulate, they triangulate, they create confusion, they create conflict with no conscience. It's almost like a dissociation, right? They also lack affective empathy. Remember, we talked about that? Compassionate empathy, they lack that. They tend to have cognitive empathy. They also have a fascination with crime. There's a research article that I'm going to post for you guys at the end of this. They have, and it talks about this, that these kind of cruel individuals, they tend to have a fascination with crime, guns, violence, school massacres. There's a reason why the media, have you ever wondered this? There's a reason why the media, when there's a massacre, they try not to mention the first and last name of the killer. And that's because of sensationalism. Other people who admire murders, they admire the Jeffrey Dahmers. Jeffrey Dahmer got so many gifts in jail, it wasn't funny. He was rich, money being sent to him, all kind of coupons to do things when he got out of prison. If he ever got out, it was horrific. Same thing with Dennis Neal. He's like the UK's Jeffrey Dahmer. And he would get gifts mailed to him, flowers, all kind of stuff, so there's people out there who support these kind of cruel individuals. So, there's kind of like this fascination with crime and darkness in these kind of individuals. Don't forget the dark triad traits. That's a part of this. You may also notice in these kind of individuals, they don't come across as 100% cruel. Sometimes your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your cousin, somebody that you're in a relationship with, they can show what we call subclinical sadism, which means they're not really 100% sadistic. They have some of the criteria, but they're not 100% sadistic. Subclinical means you're not at the clinical form of needing help right now. You're getting there, but you're not 100% there. So you may notice this in a family member. You are almost at a point of needing a diagnosis of something. You're just not 100% there. So we call that subclinical. These kind of individuals also may have paraphilic disorders as well. So they may have what we call sexual sadism, where they love inflicting harm and pain. It stimulates them sexually when there's harm and pain done to other people, or harm and pain done to the person that they are with. So these kind of individuals may actually have paraphilic disorders. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to post some research for you on that topic. If it would be helpful. And lastly, in this category, guys, they also have, again, high heritability of taking on cruel behaviors and having absolutely no empathy. There's high heritability. So it tends to be, something that runs in families. I think I gave you everything in that category, guys. Let me go to the chat box, see what you guys are saying, answer some questions, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about delusional jealousy. Now, there's different pieces to delusional jealousy. If you Google search delusional jealousy, you're going to see most articles that is available to the public. You're going to see most articles on relationship jealousy, like psychosis jealousy. My husband is having an affair jealousy. And that's not what we're talking about. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the jealousy that is born within the family, and it causes this detachment from the other family member or in the relationship with somebody else, and it creates a lot of trouble, And cruel behavior can stem from jealousy. So there's a connection between these topics. Okay, let me go to the chat box and see what you guys are saying. Kat says, my dad would come home drunk and lies about us, and my mother would believe his nonsense. It was peaceful when he was not around. Yeah, absolutely. He sounds like what you call a problematic drunk in a sense, right? There are problematic drunks. Some people drink alcohol and get nice and want to go take a nap. Other people want to create a lot of trouble. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Kat. My mom did as well. My mom did as well. Silent Walk, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat as always. Glad to see you. Courtney Frazier, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. You are not late. You are not late. Well, maybe so, but you can always play the replay. We're going to wrap up here in a little bit. Soha, yes. Is that a call? I think I welcomed you. Did I welcome you? If not, welcome. Glad to have you tonight's live chat. Betsy Rogers, I probably messed that up. I apologize. Welcome. Glad to see you back. Says some normalize the brutality against others. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Then all of us get trapped on the spiral. Cruel individuals can spread cruelty. Yes, they can. Or they just get together with others like them. Yes, it can be both. It can be both. You know how people say water seeks its own level? My grandmother used to say it all the time. Cruel people seek out cruel people. Cruel people seem to like people who are sadistic. Sadistic and cruel people tend to like people who have traits of Machiavellianism. So it's like this bind, you know? And sometimes they get together and they create their own movements. They create their own groups. You know, I can't think of any of the psychotic groups. Well, yes, I can. Here's one that just came to mind. Have you guys ever heard of NAMBLA? Is it NAMBLA? National Boy Love. Oh, National Boy Love. I can't remember it. Darn. If you Google NAMBLA in national, NAMBLA, you will probably find information. They used to be, and I don't see them around as much, they used to be an underground kind of corporation where there was like a handful of psychos who wanted to legalize men being sexual with little boys. And I think they finally went away. They tend to be very underground, and I'm not going to mention them again. I don't want to keep throwing their name out there. But their desire was to change policies, change the paraphilic policies, and legalize grown men being sexual with little boys. And so that's why they call it National Male Boy Love Association, something psychotic like that. But yeah, so that was water that sought its own level. They all got together because they all had the same endeavor in mind, you know, which is to legalize a very illegal thing. And so, yeah, it's just, I used to do a little bit of research in college about it. That's when I learned about it. It was just despicable. But these are cruel individuals who are seeking out other cruel individuals. The only way that they put that association together was because they advertised it, and other people who were unhealthy psychologically involved themselves or enrolled in the organization. So yes, that's my short answer. Yes. Inakukla, I probably mispronounced that. Forgive me. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Okay. Napalm is saying something, but I don't want to pull that up because I'm going to confuse everyone. Yeah. Silent Walk says society is really messed up. Yes, it is. Agree. Deb says the sociopath lady said she had basic feelings like sadness, anger, joy, but had zero understanding of social feelings like empathy. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. You know, I would even question her saying that she has basic feelings like sadness, anger, and joy. No, you don't. She most likely was somebody who was displaying cognitive empathy, but I highly doubt if she had any real experience. A sociopath most likely cannot experience those kind of emotions. Now, there is some research that says some sociopaths can learn to feel emotions, but that's in therapy, and that's if therapy works. Jessica J says, Tamara, I just wanted to say how lovely you look tonight. Oh my God, thank you. I do not feel lovely tonight. Thank you so much for that. As you always do. Thank you for your wisdom and validation. You've helped me so much. Oh, you're welcome. And Jessica J, you send me an email. I probably will see it tonight as I go through my emails. Much love to you. Thank you for that. Nancy R says, my mom was a dark empath. Her rudeness, meanness impacted my soul. She has passed but left a residual or residue with my siblings, so I never forget. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, something was obviously very wrong there, Nancy. You know, let me share this with you too, and this is specifically for Nancy, that I once had a client who said something very interesting to me. She said, when my narcissistic, cold mother was alive, she says, I wanted her to die. She says, and now that she's dead, I really wish she was alive, but I wish she was alive in a way that would bring life to me. And I never forgot that because basically what she's saying, and I thought that was pretty profound. What she's saying is I wish I had a good mom and I wish I had a loving mom. My mother was cold. When she was alive, I wanted her dead. But now that she's dead, I want her alive. And I wish that she could just be the mom that I've always wanted her to be. So, you know, it's very normal to feel these conflicting emotions when you have a mom who's cruel, mean, cold. Yeah. Okay, I'm looking for comments. Okay, Cam says, one of the most cruel things I have witnessed is a parent verbally attacking their son over a minor different point of view. She had to win by cutting him down. That was my first red flag. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes parents can be cruel. I just told a client recently that, well, she's a parent of a client. I just told her recently that, you know, you can be a very cruel parent. You can be a very cruel parent and not even know it. And it doesn't have to involve sexual abuse. It doesn't have to involve psychological or physical abuse. It also doesn't have to involve you neglecting their basic needs. You can feed them, you can clothe them, you can comfort them when they need it. But cruel behavior is cruel behavior, you know, and you can still be cruel, even though you provide. And even though you are there, the thing that she said to me is, she says, well, at least I'm around. Okay, but you're a problem. So, you know, you're around, but you're creating pain and heartache in that child's life. So you might as well be gone, you know? So let me tell you, I'm very passionate when it comes to children and very passionate when it comes to parents who are cruel. And if I see that you're a cruel parent, I am so happy to let you know you have a problem. You need to get your own help. Because it's not fair to the child. They didn't ask to be here, and they didn't ask to grow up with a mother like you. The least you can do is be a parent, but be a parent in the right way, you know? And so Cam, I'm with you on that one. I have had clients in the past who, you know, the parents, they feel like they need to win, quote unquote. They are nice to their kids in front of me, and as soon as they leave, they turn into the devil again. So it's tough, right? Yeah, it's really hard. Speaking Sparrow, did I welcome you? I don't remember. So welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. We're headed to wrap up here in just a little bit. Speaking Sparrow says, my mother stayed with a man who sexually abused her 5-year-old daughter. That is horrific. And I have had cases like that in the past. That's horrible. And all it does for you, I'm sure, is kind of stir up resentment, you know? That's just awful. Thank you, Deb. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to tell my mom. My mom picked this out, believe it or not. I'm a big girl, okay? I'm almost 40. But I love my mom's choice in clothes sometimes, so. Longevity rituals. Welcome, if I haven't welcomed you tonight, says, wow, I think people are being negatively affected by 5G. I'm not sure I know what that is. What is that? Are you talking about 5G for cell phones? I don't know. I get thrown off real easy, so forgive me. MV, hello, welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Says they love to sow seeds of doubt. Yes, they do. They do. They also like cruel individuals. They also like to keep you guessing. So that's what I meant when I said, you know, sometimes they use conflict and confusion. You know, they like to create that because if they stir confusion, you can't figure out where they are in the details. And sometimes your anger is displaced and it just becomes chaotic, right? Looking for more comments before we wrap up. Jackie Moore, hello. Welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Glad to see you. Dennis Robinson, hello. Welcome, by the way. Cruel individuals can be liars, 100%. Yes. Pathological liars. Okay, I'll bring this up. I'm quiet for a minute here because I'm debating. Do I want to bring this up? I'll bring it up. There was a previous man by the name of Judge Cowenberg. Okay, if you look him up, if you look up or Google pathological liars and Judge Cowenberg, you will find the story of a man who was a part of this. I think he was a part of the Supreme Court. Don't quote me on that one. But he was in the court system. He was serving as a judge. He lied not only about his credentials, about his schooling, about his experiences, but he also lied about being a judge. And he served as a judge. And unfortunately, because our system is flawed, he got away with it for so many years. But this Cowenberg guy was a very cruel individual because he lied, and he repeatedly lied, and he pathologically lied. And he even kind of, he embellished, his accomplishments, which were pretty small, but he embellished them within the court system and was harmful to other people. But it didn't impact him. He was cruel. He had a cruel streak, and he kind of, led people astray in a sense because he was a liar. He didn't know what he was doing. But I would say, he's a pathological liar, and yes, he is cruel. Just Kendra, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says, if you are upset, they are always more upset. Something worse happened to them. Sometimes. Depends on the kind of cruel individual you're dealing with. Deb says, you can actually see sociopaths mimicking your behavior with other people. They have to watch regular people so they can put on a people suit, or a mask that they are real people. Sometimes, Deb, sometimes. They study you. That's what I was trying to say earlier. They study you. They study human behavior. MV says they seem to fail to understand how feelings work. Absolutely. They will blame you for their feelings. Yes, they will. Yo-Yo's Dodo, hello and welcome back, says, I was in a room where a drug deal went down. I didn't partake nor bought drugs, but somehow my name was involved and I got blamed for drugs. Oh, that's rough. I'm sorry. Sometimes that does happen. Ugh. It's complicated. SH, hello and welcome, says, hi. Do you run into sick individuals that con a whole group of people for pecking order? I'm thinking of someone who projects a very, did you complete that sentence, SH? Upright character, but is really just conning others to put someone down. Sorry, my comment split. Yeah, no, you're okay. I get you. Did you run into sick individuals that con a whole group of people? Not yet. Not yet. I don't plan to, SH. I don't plan to. No, I don't think I have. No. I hope I never do. Deborah Penna, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, good to be here to hear and learn to help ourselves with toxic family members. Yes, always glad to have you. Okay. Bryn Parr, hello and welcome. Glad to have you back tonight. Says, what is the proper way to treat ADHD? Well, I think the proper way to treat ADHD, it really depends on, number one, what is the actual problem? Are you inattentive? Are you impulsive? Are you hyperactive? Or are you all three, right? And so if there's an inability to function in daily life, or you're very impulsive, you don't have the ability to pump the brakes, or you don't have the ability to process things because your mind works so quickly, medication is one option, and there's many, from Concerta to Adderall to, methylphenidate, the list goes on, Ritalin, even sometimes Wellbutrin can be used. It has some ADHD properties, but then also Therapy. Sometimes therapy and behavior modification can be helpful, right? You don't always have to take meds. So I hope that answers your question. Jesse P, hello. Glad to see you tonight. Welcome, welcome. Okay, looking for one last thing before I go. Nancy R, I'm just making sure that I'm getting all of you before we leave. Nancy R says, my son, a malignant narcissist, scary individual, never accepted any help, played me with his cruelty. Wow. Yeah, they're not going to accept any help at all. They don't think there's a problem for the most part, Nancy. I know you know that one. Betsy, hello and welcome. Glad to have you. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Got the memo. Hello and welcome. Said, glad to see you. Says, is evil behavior considered to be a spiritual issue or psychological? There's some of us who are psychotherapists. There's researchers, scientific researchers. There are philosophers. There's phenomenologists. There's existential therapists, which is what I am. We all believe that evil is a major component to psychological behavior that is unhealthy. So, it's kind of, for me and for the people I just mentioned, the categories, it's like, okay, psychologically, we know there's a brain, we know there's neurology, we know there's physiology, we know there's science, but we also know there's the spiritual side of human beings, right? And the spiritual side of human beings is the mind. It's the soul, and so that is spiritual. So yes, absolutely. I do believe I think they go hand in hand. Evil would be considered a spiritual issue, a philosophical issue, a phenomenology, an issue of phenomenology, I'll put it that way. And it also can be existential. Marta Kaur, hello, welcome. Thank you for the hearts. I hope you're doing well. Glad to see you tonight. Okay, just making sure that I have not overlooked any of you. I can't get to all of you tonight, but I'm trying to at least swoop you all up before we go. Elizabeth Pepper, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Says, hi, Tamara. Have you ever thought about the term mental illness being too broad? The more I heal, the more I feel I'm not mentally ill, but have psychological injuries. Well, here's the thing. I think the term mental illness is too broad of a concept. I really do feel like it's an umbrella term to categorize everything. And sometimes I think you can have depression and not necessarily be mentally ill. I also think you can have psychological injuries like childhood trauma, racism, racial trauma, intergenerational trauma. It doesn't mean you're mentally ill. It just means you have injuries, right? So, but for you personally, Elizabeth, I don't know. I would have to know more about you to be able to piece that together. Okay, just looking one more time. Grow, hello. Love that. How are y'all doing? That's cool. I like that. That sounds hip. That's something I'm not. Grow, hello and welcome. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. I see you. Good vibes. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much. I've gotten so many compliments on this shirt today. Thank you so much. This blouse. I should call it a blouse. Thank you so much, Silent Walk. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Just Kendra. Tammy Nicely. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Okay. I am just going down this list and then we're going to wrap up. Sharifa, hello and welcome. Says, I guess because the less sociable one could be the most malleable and or easily controlled. I'd have to figure out what that actually means. I'm not sure I'm catching what that's in relation to. And I'm sure it's not you, it's me. It's not you, it's me. Maybe if you mention that in the comment section, that would be great. I can go ahead, if you can explain that a little bit more, I'm happy to answer that one. I have no idea how to pronounce this. Moose Swift, hello. Welcome. Glad to see you. I very much agree. Children and dogs, no, I agree. Kelly Mills, yes. I wish I had a picture. It was very, very heartbreaking. Welcome, Kelly, by the way. Tammy nicely says, my mother would do cruel things to us as kids. Now she can't hurt me physically. She does verbalize cruelty by swearing at me. Excuse me, guys. I've had to go no contact for nearly a year now. I hate to say it, but sometimes that's the only way that you're going to get peace of mind, right? Nobody wants to go no contact, but sometimes that's the only way to gain that peace of mind and that separation from that abuse, you know? Andronicus, hello and welcome. Glad to see you back. Says, IMO, the worst type of cruel person is the one who pretends to be your loving partner, parent, friend, or colleague while undermining you behind your back, saying a lot of passive aggressive comments. I very much agree. Very much agree. There's a cruel nature to that, right? Excuse me. I'm seeing a lot of new people tonight. I'm always happy to see you guys. All right, I'm going to read 2 more comments and then we got to wrap up, guys. We have another conversation tomorrow, by the way. So if I haven't already said, I think I have. Mended and Whole, hello and welcome. I like that screen name. Says, I used to be a mental health worker in the 80s while I got my psych degree. All these cases are similar. I worked in locked unit, private for teens, psychopathic, and animal cruelty was the earmark. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Doesn't it tire you out? You know, it was when I got my first job as a young therapist. I was about 25, maybe 24, maybe 23. I was somewhere around in there. And I got my first job working in a locked unit with teenage boys who not only sexually violated other people, other children, other siblings, but also engaged in animal cruelty, fire setting. One kid murdered someone. And I would just walk down the halls of their school. It was a charter school, excuse me, specifically for boys on a locked unit. And these boys would come in with ankle bracelets and cuffs, and the list goes on, you know. And I just burned out of that position. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. A lot of those boys were lovely boys. They were just so terribly misguided. But the ones that I did, you know, have the experience with, the narcissist, the sociopathic young people that was there, was just horrific. I know you can relate to that, Mended and Whole. It's very sad. Courtney Frazier says, my parents wanted to go to family therapy back in September of 2021. After I got back from my stay in the mental health ward, I wasn't ready. Once I was ready to do family therapy, they didn't want to anymore. Oh my God. That's a dynamic, Courtney. I'm sorry. Ugh. Okay, one last comment. I'm looking. The Puzzled Goddess, hello and welcome. Oh God, what did I do? Harold White, I don't know if I welcomed you. Hello. I'm looking for one last comment before we sign off. Belinda Marie, hello and welcome. You're going to be my last one tonight. Says, so happy I finally caught a live chat. Yes, so glad to have you as well. Thank you for this very interesting therapy session, Tamara. You're welcome. I love that. It is like a therapy session, right? I relate to the evil people ex who steals a family inheritance. Happened to me when I was 19, was left with 0. Yeah. That is just depressing, right? It rightfully isn't theirs to take, but they believe it is, or they take it anyway, right? Guys, you guys are wonderful. Tomorrow, again, I will be back briefly to talk about delusional jealousy. I really hope this live chat was helpful. It looks like it. Any comments I didn't get to, or people forgive me. I'm glad to have you on. I will see you guys tomorrow. Any questions, comments about this, please post in the comment section. After these things go off, you know, I take maybe a 2-hour break and then I come back and I answer questions. So post them for me. All right, guys, I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye-bye.